Hey guys, what's up? Dork Sparse bringing you some more Space Marine news. Now, normally in the previous video, I talked about how I would not be coming back to Space Marine unless something happened, and what do you know, something happened a few days later. That being that the developers have rounded off the rest of the Year 2 roadmap for 2025. We're starting off first with the PvP mode, which is actually Chaos versus Chaos. Basically, I guess it's going to be like a domination type mode. Players are going to be fighting, or teams are going to be fighting for control of the point, and then once that point has been secured by that specific team, a randomizer will be generated, and it is going to actually choose between the selected players that were within that control point to become a Hellbrute, basically the chaos version of a Dreadnought. The only question I have for that is why they chose to make it Chaos versus Chaos when it can easily be just a standard Chaos versus Loyalists, because Loyalists have Dreadnoughts as well. Could easily have, be a Loyalist Dreadnought rather than having to be a Chaos versus Chaos thing. I don't know exactly why they're doing it that way, where it's Chaos versus Chaos. I'm not gonna say it's a bad thing. I'm just kind of wondering why it's just not Chaos versus Loyalist. That way we have the opportunity to play as both a Hellbrute and a Dreadnought, given that those two kind of play out a little bit differently. Their weapon types kind of vary, or maybe that is just specifically for a balancing point. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a Dreadnought would be a little bit stronger than a Hellbrute, or maybe a Hellbrute is probably stronger than a Dreadnought. I don't really know the reasoning behind it, but it's just the fact that we're getting another PvP mode to begin with. PvP, as you know, in Space Marine, it's very bare bones. There's not a whole lot going on with it, not even kill streaks or death streaks. It literally comes down to how skilled you are as a player. That's well and good and all. It's just, if you're a PvP fanatic coming across players who are just mostly about PvE, I mean, there's obviously going to be a skill gap there. I do not know what the matchmaking looks like at this point in time. I have tried touching PvP just a couple of times, but I'm just way too rusty at it now, just because I'm just more of a PvE guy at this point. And plus, Warhammer in general, any Warhammer game you play, save for very, very specific ones like maybe like Total War 3, those ones, yeah, they're definitely more of a PvP type thing. I mean, obviously the tabletop inspiration for Warhammer coming from the tabletop, that is a PvP experience. When it comes to Warhammer games in general, they generally do better as a co-op experience rather than a PvP experience. But it does make sense for the PvP to be focused on Loyalists versus Heretics. That's definitely a PvP thing. Otherwise, generally speaking, Warhammer does do better as a co-op experience, but I'm never going to say no to more PvP stuff. So I'm sure that's going to be a really fun game mode to check out once it comes out. I can't really say too much else on Chaos Forces just because I'm not too big on Chaos in general. I don't know a whole lot about their lore besides just the surface level of what exactly Chaos is, what the warp is, and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my take on it. They are bringing out a new melee weapon, which is the Power Axe. It's actually going to have its own moveset and its own executions. That's actually going to be pretty nice. We've been needing some new weapons for a while. There's a ton of melee weapons in the Warhammer universe that we still haven't explored yet. So it's nice that that's going to be coming along. I do believe I also read somewhere that they're also going to be bringing in Pyroblast weapons, the Flamers. That's kind of long overdue at this point. Pyroblast Flamer weapons definitely will make use for the heavy. The heavy definitely needs some more weapon variety at this point in time, even though they recently were given the option to basically become a heavy intercessor, which is their canonical accurate unit. When you give a heavy heavy bolt rifle, that does turn them into basically a heavy intercessor. That's the actual unit. The heavy needs a little bit more variety in weapons to choose from. And then the big one, besides the PvP mode, it actually is the new class. Now, I actually made a video a while ago talking about potential new classes we would see in Space Marine. Two of them being the Apothecary and the Tech Marine, which were probably going to be the two most viable options. But I also kind of discussed that Apothecary might be a little bit too overpowering, considering it is a full-on medic. However, the Bulwark really pretty much does this job, kind of depending on whether or not you're building the Bulwark for sustainability or for increased armor regen or anything like that, or even popping the standard and it'll revive teammates. It does the job that the Apothecary could do. So it does make sense that the Apothecary just would not be a balanced option, and the developers even confirmed that the Apothecary is never going to make its way into Space Marine 2. So if you wanted to play Apothecary, there are mods for it. I'm still not going to dive into the mods because I still want to see what basically the developers have to offer for this game, even though they gave the modding community their blessing to continue modding the game as as they see fit. But the one class that they are confirming, which I also talked about in that video, was the Tech Marine. Now the Tech Marine is kind of a tricky one to implement because there are no vehicles in this game. In Space Marine, it's all boots on the ground type stuff. The only time that the Tech Marine makes sense to use is in a game called Warhammer 40k Battle Sector. That one is basically a virtual version of the Warhammer tabletop game. It does have armored units in there, scout units, heavy tanks, medium tanks, and of course dreadnoughts. Makes sense to have the Tech Marine as a playable unit in there. That way you have something keeping your armored units alive. Here in Space Marine, I'm not sure how exactly that's going to work. You go back to the Bulwark, however, the Bulwark has these options to keep your team's armor segments up. Maybe the Tech Marine, as I mentioned in my previous video about what kind of classes we could see, I did mention that a Tech Marine could possibly increase the passive armor segment for your squad by 1 armor segment. So most of the classes can have 4 armor segments rather than having 3. Some will have 3 instead of 2. Maybe they'll implement something like that as a passive, or it could be a perk. Not too sure. Another option too is the 4th armor segment or the 3rd armor segment, depending on the class, could also be a permanent addition so long as the Tech Marine is in that game. There could also be other options too. Maybe they'll give the Tech Marine possibly a passive, or again a perk. Probably all these could be perks pretty much. Maybe there's a perk that can actually increase the accuracy of your squad's weapons, could also increase the ammo capacity for your weapons, increase the damage of those weapons. I'm not sure. There's plenty of different ideas to kind of storm through and figure out what could be a perk, what could be the passive, what could be the signature ability. Maybe the signature ability is just increased damage, but then again, that kind of makes it not obsolete, but it does make it redundant when you have the Tactical Marine, the Auspex scan. When you use Auspex scan on enemy, it debuffs the enemy, makes them weaker to it. It makes them more susceptible to attacks, so it lowers their defense rating. Or maybe the Tech Marine's signature ability could be increasing weapon damage, and then who knows what kind of variance of the signature ability they could make it into. It seems like a really fun class when you think about it, but they need to balance it out to where it's not going to be like a hard requirement. Like players aren't going to start demanding a Tech Marine be part of the squad for the highest difficulty missions, or it's not going to be a required class, but it gives you an option to pick that class. Kind of like with any other class, there is no weak class in the game. Every class has a strong point. Every class has their weaknesses. I mean, I can tell you the obvious weakness right now is having a Bulwark and an Assault Marine in the same game. You know, when you have to deal with a whole bunch of Neurothropes and Zoanthropes, basically a lot of flying type enemies, you are left at a disadvantage because those two classes can only use pistol type weapons or secondary weapons. I'm not sure what the Tech Marine's loadout is going to look like. The Tech Marine signature loadout does include a pistol as well as a power axe. I'm not sure if that's going to be defaulted to that loadout, or maybe the power axe is going to be integrated into the Tech Marine's kit. I would love to see that their specific weapon actually tied into their kit, their abilities, rather than it being just a weapon that you can equip, because they are coming out with a power axe, so maybe they can give a variant to the Tech Marine to make it a little bit different. Who knows? It would be nice to see some of these classes have a little bit more variety to their weapons. Right now, the Tactical Marine has the most variety of weapons to choose from, with the Sniper and the Vanguard having the least amount of weapons to choose from, and the Heavy is like right there. Again, the Heavy did get recent access to the heavy bolt rifle, but they really need possibly a Pyroblast weapon, maybe some Volkite weaponry. I'm not too sure. The Heavy needs a little bit more variety, so hopefully they don't constrict the weapon types of the Tech Marine. Hopefully the Tech Marine has a good variety of weapons to choose from, but again, plenty of opportunities. We just gotta wait and see what happens with them. Right now, I believe there is a mod out there where you can play as like a Tech Marine, but I think it's just pretty much all cosmetic. I would love to see the Tech Marine's look, its kit, its weapons actually be integrated into its kit. So that pretty much covers what's going on with the rest of the Year 2 roadmap, which is the new PvP mode, which is the Chaos vs. Chaos, players be able to play as a Hellbrute, the Tech Marine, and the new Power Axe weapon with brand new animations and executions. That's all pretty good. Maybe they'll add a little bit more moving forward with 2025. I mean, we still have about half a year, or who knows, maybe that is enough content for the rest of the year. Did read somewhere that the next champion is going to be a Black Templar champion. Now I'm going to quickly say my piece on the champion packs moving forward. there was that whole heated discussion. I even made a video about it too on why the Salamander champion was released and tied to the sniper class. That just did not make sense. When we were supposedly going to be getting the Raven Guard champion pack, which ended up just becoming a cosmetic pack instead, a Raven Guard champion would make the most sense as a recon class, because that's all Raven Guards are about. The entire chapter is about stealth and espionage, moving silently through the battlefield, not being seen, that kind of stuff. Makes sense to have it be a sniper class, whereas a Salamander champion, it would have been best as either a heavy or tactical marine. And then of course later on they do release the Iron Fist champion pack, and it's actually tied to the tactical marine. I think that makes perfect sense, but again, in my opinion, an Iron Fist champion would make the most sense as a bulwark, because they're all about defense, they're all about siege. Bulwark fits that build perfectly. Plus, you know, the bulwark isn't an actual class on the tabletop. That's just what they call it. I mean, technically the bulwark is supposed to be called a Blade Guard veteran. It was their reasoning. They changed it to bulwark just so that way the class had more options to choose from as far as weaponry goes, rather than following one for one on the tabletop. So that's fine. Then there was the White Scars champion pack. Now the White Scars all about speed, finessing their way through the battlefield. And you know what? It being an assault marine, I think that's perfectly fine. Assault is basically the fastest moving unit in the game, so you know, it makes sense to kind of tie in the fastest unit to White Scars. The White Scars are all about speed. They love their bikes. I would have also allowed it to be a tactical marine as well, but again, assault class would have been the best choice for Raven Guard, even though Raven Guard also has the option to be a good recon class. Either way, I'm really hoping that with the Black Templars in particular, I really want to see Black Templar champion be released for the Bulwark in particular, because when you look at the lore behind a Black Templar champion, basically for them, as their champion is chosen based on which Black Templar was, you know, they were sleeping, they had a dream or something, and then they woke up and then they tell their brothers like, oh hey, I got spoken to the voice of the Emperor, or I heard the voice of the Emperor, I was speaking to him, we became bros and such, and I think I'm their champion now. And then the chapter will say, oh, okay, yeah, well, here's the sword, go and do your thing. So basically that's how a Black Templar champion is chosen. I don't think it's the same for every other champion. I think that's specifically for Black Templars. I do want to see that specific champion pack released for the Bulwark. Now that every single class has a champion pack, I think the Heavy is the one with the oldest champion pack, which actually was part of the special edition of Space Marine 2, where it also included the Ultramarines champion pack, which is for the Heavy, but you can also buy it separately. I don't know what the next champion pack will be after that, but hopefully kind of give that champion pack to the Heavy. It's been a while since the Heavy has received anything. All it has to do is just make sense for the Heavy to be that specific champion. As long as it ties in like lore wise and it fits the Heavy, then you know what, give it to the Heavy. Also forgot to mention, I do believe they're also bringing the Pyre Blast weapons as well within the rest of 2025. Don't know when that's going to be. It is long overdue for the Pyre Blast weapons. Just again, it's kind of unfortunate that the Salamander champion is stuck with the Recon class, because I'm pretty sure the Recon class is not going to get anything Pyre Blast specific, which means can't really fit that theme perfectly as much as we would like to. So, you know, whoever can use the Pyre Blast weapons, just make yourself a nice looking Salamander. I might just do a video on my own personal take on a Salamander champion with the current cosmetics that we have now. So I don't know, probably look out for that. I do want to try and make my own iterations of some champions moving forward. Again, since we have so many more cosmetics out and more color options to choose from, more emblems, more iconography, I am definitely going to go and revisit that. The one thing I don't think I can revisit at this point in time is more successor chapters, because again, in a previous video I mentioned a lot of these successor chapters, they just don't have any descriptions or pictures of what the chapter looks like, or it's kind of hard to kind of interpret some of their chapter schemes, their chapter colors, when again there's no description, no picture or anything like that. And there's also plenty of other successor chapters out there. I think the Blood Angels DLC pack actually released released a successor chapter that is so bare bones. All it is just one, I think it's like a colored kneecap and then iconography, and that's about it. I always avoided making those because there's just not a whole lot of material to work with. All you do is you change a very minute color somewhere on the armor, and then suddenly that's a successor chapter. Successor chapter. I just didn't think those would have been good videos at all to watch. I know that some people have wanted me to kind of do like a follow-up on my Grey Knights, because now that we have some more armor options coming out, maybe I can do like a Grey Knights champion. Gonna look into that as well, again, since we have so many more armor options to choose from, so look out for that. I think I actually might just start doing that, just another Grey Knights champion. I just love anything and everything Grey Knights. All right, that about covers covers this video. A lot to kind of dissect within about 13-14 minutes. So good stuff moving forward. Hopefully there's a year 3 for Space Marine. I would love to see the game constantly get some updates, and then maybe, you know, like the last 6 months of the game's lifespan before Space Marine 3, maybe then I'll be fine with the content kind of slowing down a bit. But either way, let's just hope for a year 3 season moving forward. Okay, this is Dork Spar signing off.